Welcome to my presentation for the Basic HUD for cache games. Let's start with the explanation of the construction of the HUD panels. The HUD panel consists of 4 lines. The first line shows the player name and the symbol. The second line shows VPIP, PFR, Preflop 3-betting and folds against 3-bets. The third line is showing positional RFI from early position to button. Then comes a separator which splits pre and post flop. And the fourth HUD panel line starts with c-bet flop, folds against c-bet flop, a small separator, then check raise flop, fold against check raise flop, small separator, and total AF. Okay, each stat of the HUD panel is linked to a so-called Statpopup. A Statpopup is simply a pop-up linked to a stat which shows extended information linked to the target stat. So for example, when we hover or click on the first statistic, which is VPIP, you can see a VPIP Statpopup which shows statistics linked to VPIP like limping, or limp folding, limp calling, limp 3-betting, or how he is responding against limps or playing post-flop in limp pots. Then you can see a Statpopup for PFR with the tabs for PFR and ISO raises. You have a Statpopup for preflop 3-betting as well, of course, for folds against 3-bets, with a tab for folds and calls. Then you have an individual pop-up for the positional of eyes. So when we hover or click on the positional of eye stats, you can see positional and stack-sized informations, like how often he is total raise first in, and how often he is raise first in with some stack size filtering, like 100 to 120 big blinds or 120 to 150 big blinds, and so on. And next to the RFI, you can see how often he is folding against 3-bets after he raised first in. And then you can see a separator which shows then 3-bet non-all-ins or against 3-bet non-all-ins and against squeezes. So how often the player is folding, calling, or 4-betting. So, but this is only the RFI general first tab. You also find tabs for limps and flatting. And when we browse or look on the other tabs, here you're gonna see many useful informations for stack size filters or positional awareness. So here on the bottom you can see stack sized open limps and the reaction against several ISO raise sizes, and positional flatting with stack size filtering. Alright, then we have a look on Postflop Stat-Popups, which starts with the c-bet flop Stat-Popup. Here you find any important information which you need in game. So you can see a general tab here for c-bet flop, you can see a tab for boards for seperate flop, and you can see a tab for 3-bit flops in 3-bit pods. So, but the general tab for seperate flop consists of display for total sepating, IP separates, out of position separates, multi-way separates. You can see the used bed sizings. You can see how villain is responding against raises. You can see the bed lines. You can analyze which separates are taken on the individual board categories. There's a tab for the actions against missed separates. So how often or how he is responding against float bets, which are bet IPs against missed separate out of position, and how he is responding against probe bets on the turn. Yeah, and furthermore you see a tab for turn and river c-bets in only one pop-up here. So you can rapidly open super detailed informations about each street. Fold against c-bet on the flop shows individual folds and calls for each street. So you can see some positional folds and calls and see the understanding against or reaction against certain sizes. And since callings come to a showdown at some point, you're gonna see post-flop diagrams where you can hover over it and you can see the range composition. This is a feature of the default Hand2Note. Then we have a Stat-Popup for check raises, where you can see check raise flop statistics, but also check raise turn statistics and check raise river statistics. On the fold against check raise flop pop-up, you can see fold reactions, call reactions, and raise reactions. And the total aggression factor stat here shows you a legend, which you can edit manually how you think the numbers might be best. But on the left side you can see flop, turn, river, and total aggression factor numbers. Okay, that's so far for the Statpopups. Ultimately, I wanna show you the main pop-ups, which you can launch when you click on it, on the HUD panel I mean. And this is the main pop-up list of all pop-ups. So you have overview pop-up in the main pop-up list for preflop 3-betting. You can see a pop-up for squeezes, a pop-up for 4-bets after he raised first in, but also cold 4-bets, and 4-bets after raise first in against squeezing. Then we have several pop-ups for post-flop. So we have a main c-bet pop-up for the preflop aggressor in single raise pot for a comparison of c-bet flop with c-bet turn and c-bet reverse. Here I think you're gonna find almost any information you're gonna need in c-bet flops statistics. Then we have a pop-up for against float bets. Once again, the definition of a float bet is betting in position against missed c-bet out of position. So here the preflop aggressor is out of position and the flatter is betting in position into him. How he is responding on flop, turn and river. How the preflop aggressor is playing against probe betting for turn and river. How the preflop aggressor is playing against donk bets in flop, turn and river. And then we have pop-ups for being the caller in single raise pots. So when the caller is facing a c-bet, how he is responding against the c-bet on the flop, but also how he is responding against c-bets on the turn and how he is responding against c-bets on the river. So you can see folds, calls and check raises or raises against the c-bet. Then being the caller, we have a pop-up for doing float bet, betting in position against missed c-bet out of position. You have a pop-up for the vice versa action, so for probe bets, which is betting out of position against missed c-bet in position. Since this action can apply on turns and rivers, we have two columns here, one for turn and one for river. Then we have a pop-up for the caller doing donk bets. So whenever the player is doing a donk bet, how is he donk betting on the flop and on the turn and on the river. Then we have a pop-up for the 3-better in 3-bet pots, how he is constructing his c-bet strategies. This is somewhat copy like this pop-up here, which is the single raise pot c-bets. This here is the 3-bet pot c-bets. So don't mix those two up. And then we have a pop-up for facing bets in a 3-bet pot. So how the 3-better is reacting against float bet or probe bet or donk bets. And at the end of the main pop-ups, you can see a general pop-up for postflop as the caller in 3-bet pots. So how the player is responding against c-bets, how often he is or what is his strategy in float bets, in probe bets, but also in donk bets. And if you have watched this video carefully, you're gonna see many colored bars here, which are simply the Hand2Note postflop diagrams. Those show the postflop board strength composition. So you can see how often he is c-betting or any action with trash hands, ace high hands, gut shot hands and so on. But this is part of Hand2Note itself. And it's even free, so you don't need a Hand2Note subscription or something like that to use those things I have shown you. And yeah, let's end the video with the presentation of the display of the few different HUD versions. So I want to show you 4 different HUD displays. Here, this is the first one. This is the second one, which shows a somewhat lower opacity alternative in Hand2Note. So whenever you need a HUD panel or some statistics, you click on the tab here and the tab opens. This allows you to keep focus on the table and minimize the visible stats here. Then I want to show you the third HUD display, which is simply an transparent HUD, as you can see here. And lastly, an transparent and lower opacity HUD. And one thing more, there are 2 total font size available, so in case you think of this font sizes are too big, you simply use the small description here. And as you can see, the font size decreases. So I recommend this when you are playing on a small resolution monitor or on a laptop, so to save some space. Alright, thanks for watching.